So today on Beyond Turning Points, we're doing a solo cast. And what that means is it's just me and you. So maybe it's a duo cast. And I thought that today I'd share my near-death experience story. And I have shared it before, but my guidance is telling me to keep sharing it. And it's not necessarily a comfortable thing for me to share, but it's important. So that's what we're doing this episode on Beyond Turning Points. So 7 years ago, I had a near-death experience where I went into hospital for a back operation, and it was spinal fusion. And during the operation, the surgeons tore a vein, and they didn't know. And they subsequently stitched me back up and sent me back to the ward to recover. And during the night, I was experiencing a lot of pain. And the next morning, I was still in a lot of pain. And the physio came to get me up to begin physio exercises. And I remember looking down at my leg, and it was very swollen. And of course it was swollen because I've had such massive blood loss. And the physio didn't clue onto this, and he was quite young. And in an ideal world, the surgeons would have known, the physio would have known, the nurses would have known when I kept telling them I was in a lot of pain. And the physio assisted me to stand up, and I became very dizzy, fell back on the bed, and wasn't in a good way. He hit the emergency button, and very quickly there was an emergency crew that came in, and I wasn't breathing. I had no pulse, and I was aware that it wasn't a good situation to be in, to say the least. And initially I thought, oh, it'll be okay, this will get better. And over time, it just kept going and going. And I realized that I was in fact dying. I had no pulse. I wasn't breathing. I was very aware of where everybody was in the room. And I had the oxygen mask on. I had the heart sensors, and the crew were saying to me, stay with us, Ash, keep your eyes open. And they were reading out my blood pressure. And at one point they said his blood pressure is 52 on 36. And normally it would be about 120 on 60 or 120 on 70. And I just thought, this is it, I'm dying. And then I blacked out. And it was a very curious thing because I could still think. And for months I questioned that this even happened. And I thought, well, maybe I just fainted. But when people faint, they can't think. And I still had this awareness. And I remember this sensation of expansion, as if you drop pebbles in a pond. I was the pebbles, and I was expanding out and out and out and out, and I was going in all directions. And I really felt like I was the ripples. And as I was expanding, I was still aware of what was happening. And I started this dialogue saying, I want to stay. And I said a few times, I want to stay, I want to stay, I want to stay. And I started basically bargaining for my life. And I don't know who I was talking to. I was just saying it in this state of conscious awareness, in a state where I had blacked out or fainted. And I started saying the people that I wanted to stay for. And I was in a relationship with somebody else at that time, and I said I wanted to stay for her. We had a blended family, and I said I wanted to stay for the kids, and I continued to go out infinitely. And it's a hard sensation to describe, but I was aware of what was happening. I felt like me, which really surprised me. I thought that this sort of transition into death, I would become this enlightened Buddha being. But what I experienced was I was myself. And I had no physical pain whatsoever. And suddenly I felt this warmth, even though I just said I had no physical pain, right? But I felt this warmth, and it was like this golden warmth that came. And I said that I want to stay for the work that I do and walk the planet from my heart. And the moment I expressed that, the instant, I came straight back into my body, opened my eyes, I was breathing, I had a heartbeat, and I was alive. I had ridiculous amounts of pain. I started screaming because the amount of blood that I had lost internally was pushing on my organs, and that was level 11 pain. And I knew what level 10 pain was as far as nerve pain goes from having my back injury, but this pain was next level. But there was this part of me that was really grateful that I was alive. And to be honest, I was most grateful that I was alive for my daughter, because that was the person I didn't want to leave. I didn't want for her to grow up with a dad that was dead. And I can feel the emotion as I share that. And it's a gift 7 years on to still be here and to see her and spend time with her and see the young woman that she's become. And I'm so, so, so grateful for that experience. And so what happened from there was I developed some complications and ended up with a very large blood clot that went from my abdomen down to my ankle. And the can't remember the name in this moment, but the surgeon who works on those kind of things, it was the biggest he'd ever seen in 20 years. And I had a lot of difficulty walking, and I was very, very ill. And I was in ICU and went through morphine, which was horrible. So for me, it was just these nightmare hallucinations. And if I just blinked for a tenth of a second, I hallucinated, and it was quite horrific. So after a couple of days of that, I went off the morphine, and it was as if every medication that I got put on, the consequences or the side effects of those medications outweighed the benefits. And so I had to keep getting clear and keep getting clear. And after 3 weeks in hospital, I went home, and then 2 weeks after that, the relationship I was in, we split up, and that had been trying. And during that time when I was in hospital, it was quite trying. And I often reflect and think, well, you know, when there's a situation like that, a crisis that happens like that, it's either going to make the relationship or break the relationship. And by necessity, it broke the relationship. And so I had this experience where I had to start life again from pretty much zero. Had very few possessions other than my musical instruments and my daughter's toys and her desk and her bed. And life started again. And I was very, very unwell. It took me almost 8 months to get back to full-time work, but I was very unwell. And I had this gratitude that I was alive, but I also had this awareness that there'd been this thing that happened when I was blacked out that I couldn't explain, that I was trying to rationally explain. And I got to this point where I just thought, well, people can have their opinions, but I'm going to go on what my experience was and what the contract was. And so I consider it a contract, and the contract is to stay for the work that I do and walk the planet from my heart. And when I was expressing that in that state on the other side, or whatever you want to call it, in expansion and blacked outness, I experienced a download of what it looked like, what the work was. And the work was be myself and share myself. And that's one of the reasons that I'm sitting here right now talking about this experience, is because that's the contract. And also this podcast exists because of that contract. And I was also shown that to be myself, I had to do the work. And initially the work was, how do I live from my heart? And so the next few years was really exploring, how do I live from my heart? What does that even mean? And I mustn't have been living from my heart for that experience to happen. And so after that period of exploring what it means to live from the heart, which is a constant exploration, by the way, but that first few years, it was very intense learning how to live from the heart. And I was blessed to come into another relationship which continues to this day, and it's very loving and kind and generous, and it's a relationship where we both get to be ourselves, and it's a very, very fulfilling experience. So I have gratitude for that too. And one of the key things is that I see life differently now, and the experience of knowing that I am mortal and experiencing mortality means that I want to squeeze every drop out of life. And I want to not die the next time feeling like I didn't live life to the fullest, that I didn't take advantage of this planet that I'm on, and experience the gifts of the planet and the gifts of the people and the gifts of, for example, the instruments that I play, and the gift of this ability to create and share. And to do that, what I discovered was I had to work through my traumas, which I had been doing and possibly continue to do, right? And I had to become really aware of the beliefs that were running in my subconscious that were preventing me from doing that pre-near-death experience, but also after. And it's been pretty intense, but what a gift. What a gift to be alive, and what a gift to experience life in this state, in this place where there's very little self-judgment compared to what it used to be like. And to be able to engage in life in a way that feels more from the heart and with much, 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 much less fear. It's extraordinary. And that's, you might have heard at the beginning of the podcast about the inner critic quiz. That's one of the reasons I'm doing this work with the inner critic and sharing this work, so that people can experience what it's like to more fully be themselves and more fully be able to create what it is they want to create for themselves and for their loved ones. And to know that it's possible to have greater freedom in your thoughts and feel more connected to your heart and come from that place from your heart. Something I've learned is that there's love and there's fear. And that love exists whether you have a body or not. Love is a connection to the soul. And fear is a physical thing. My soul doesn't fear. And so when I experience fear, it's temporary. And it can be an illusion, right? That the fear is an illusion. So when I'm in fear, I'm in illusion. When I can come back to love, that's my natural state. And so developing tools to be able to come back to that natural state, and meditation and being physical and breath work and connecting with others and connecting with my body and playing music and being creative and sharing myself, they're all ways of coming from a place of love for me. And it feels very fulfilling to be able to share this with people. Also, the value of physical health has been a big insight, that my experience of life is greatly impacted by the level of my physical health. And it was a high priority before, but now it's one of the highest priorities. And what I've learned is that living from the heart means to honor myself. And pre-near-death experience, I wasn't honoring myself very well at all. And I was one of those people who would self-sacrifice for everybody else. I was the last in line. And that wasn't what I was here for. And I wasn't able to experience the fullness of myself and give that fullness to others because I wasn't taking care of myself and wasn't nurturing what I needed. And so there's this little juggling act that happens, right? And there's so many variables, and life changes and commitments change and all that kind of thing. But in there, it's crucial for me to be able to live from the heart, to nurture myself in the process and have this self-compassion for myself. So that was one of the big lessons. And in that too, I had to learn about expectations, my expectations, other people's expectations, letting go of loved ones, letting go of friendships that didn't serve, still hold many people in my heart, but I might not see them as much, letting go of the places that I was living, and surrendering to the work of the heart, which was beneficial for me, and as I learn all the time, is beneficial for others when I surrender to that. And my operating system, so my conditioning, my mind will be telling me that I shouldn't do what's right for me because it'll harm others. And I don't think that's true. That comes from a place of fear. And that was a big shift for me to be able to do that. The other thing, connecting to nature, has been beautiful. And even though the path isn't clear, right, I might have had a download, but it wasn't a roadmap saying this is where you go. It was just that somewhere out in the mist, there's a mountain. We want you to climb the mountain. That was my direction. It doesn't say how to get to the top of the mountain or navigate the snowstorms or anything like that. But living that life of a purpose and having a contract has been just life-changing. And learning the art of feeling, gosh, what a gift. The art of feeling pain, the art of being able to process pain, be with pain, emotional pain, really, really important. And if there's something that I'm running from or I'm resisting, that's suffering. If I come in and I face it, that's challenge. And so I'm going to wrap it up there. It's just a short podcast today, just to share and hopefully get you thinking in some way about what it is that you're resisting in your life, or in what way you're not nurturing yourself, because it's crucial that you do nurture yourself. It's crucial that you do allow yourself to feel, because this is part of being in a physical body, is to feel. This is part of the soul's purpose, is to feel. right? Without a physical body, we can't feel the pain. And there's beauty in the pain. The duality of feeling pain and beauty, they exist together, and I've experienced that. So there's the inner critic quiz, which you've heard about. There's an inner critic course. If you do the quiz, you'll get the link for the course. I'll put it in the description as well. And the other thing is, if you want to reach out and you've been thinking about reaching out to have a chat about working together one-on-one, I would love that. You know, this work that I do isn't just for me. It's to share, and it's to help, and it's to help others. So thank you for listening to the podcast. Thank you for benefiting from what the guests have to share. And what a gift it is to be alive and be able to just have this conversation with you. So sending my love wherever you are, and we'll connect again soon.